Hi guys, welcome to The Trade, episode 57. I am interviewing Nick Gonzo today. Yeah!
Hello!
So Nick, welcome. Yay!
Glad to be here.
Yay! Nick's a comics creator over in... What part of the world are you in, Nick? Let the folks know.
Northern England.
Ooh.
I'm from Leeds, basically, which is a industrial city in the north of England, in a hallowed mystical county called Yorkshire.
Okay.
It's kind of like the Shire, but like the Shire at the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy when all the orcs have moved in.
So you got some hairy bits here and there.
Conversation.
Yeah. You got some hairy bits here and there, and everybody's grumpy and cranky and trying to bite you.
Yeah. It's like you've been, add in a poor taxi service and you're really there.
All right. So Nick, why don't we go ahead and take it off and have you just explain what you're doing right now?
Okay, so I am 1/4 of a comic books company called Matias Comics. And we are 4 people who got together to basically create a platform to distribute and print our own comic books because we were fed up of working for other people and not being our own true voices across, So there is myself, Robin Jones, who is another writer, creator of paperbacks and ink stains, alongside Michael Sambrook, and Brad Holman, who's the artist on Average Joe, and we basically go out and we publish a bunch of stuff. My comic books are usually sort of existentially wrong, philosophically strange, and just genuinely a bit of a head fuck. So I've got titles like 50 Signal, which is all about the strange things you'll find at the edge of the universe. Functional Samurai, which is all about cleaving zombies into parts to try and get milkshakes. And I've got another comic book coming out soon called Corsair, which is all about the scary things that lie in history.
Very, very cool. Yeah, at the time that this podcast will be posted, he's going to be doing a Kickstarter for Corsair, and so we'll have links down in the doobly-doo for everybody that wants to go and support.
Yeah. Basically, at the moment, because you're watching this, traveler, in the future, who knows what has happened in the future in these trying times. So if you follow on Twitter, the Corsair Twitter, which is at Enemy of Order, or just follow myself at Nick_Gonzo, and I will link to it regularly. Then you can keep up to date with the actual URL that Kickstarter will eventually provide us with, that they have yet to do so.
Yeah, they don't like giving those out until you're actually live for some reason.
I would have thought that they would give you something that you have to be able to like put on flyers so you can hand it around, but you don't.
Not yet, anyways. That's maybe something you could throw in their suggestion box.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that as you are called The Trade, we'll probably be talking about the things that I learned when I was doing a Kickstarter as we go along. So let's not ruin that segment for later.
Hell no.
Yes, Kickstarter is a big part of independent comic books at the trade at the moment. It's how most people do it, because it's not only just a good method of getting the money together for it, but also it's I remember the first time I ever released a comic book, first time I got 50 Signal published, I got 100 copies, and I thought to myself, God, I really hope I don't have 75 copies of this for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? Like, you sell a bunch, people are like, oh, it's interesting, and then you're stuck with the rest of them. Like, every single time somebody comes to visit you, you're like, oh, have you read my comic book? And they're like, yeah, you gave us one last time. I was like, well, give it to your friends. But, doing a new title is always that gamble that you're going to spend a ton of money and then no one's going to buy it. At least with Kickstarter, if there's an interest before it happens.
Exactly. It helps you really gauge your audience and overall just what you can aim for in the future, too, if you do something similar. That's always that crapshoot there with audiences. But it's also a good way to not necessarily I wouldn't say it's fail-proof, but at the same time, it actually helps you.
Oh, it's not fail-proof because at the end of the day, especially if you work by my model, which is that we've got the black and white art finished at this point, and we've got several colored pages. Whether or not we succeed or not, those people still need to get paid. Otherwise, I'm a slave driver and should be locked up.
Well,
I'd rather not do that.
They need to have more time for comics. I mean,
well, it depends on who I'm working for. Like, if they decide that I need to till a field, I probably would, like I'm gonna sit outside picking cabbages.
Cabbage. So, all right. Well, how did you get into comics originally?
I've been doing them for as long as I can remember. Like, I know that's like a real, people, because God, I wish I could formulate sentences. No, right. So I've been doing it for as long as I can remember. Like, even as a kid, I would make, because I'd read a lot of annuals and stuff, and they'd always have a comic book in them because it's like a short thing to sort of tie the story together. And that would be my favorite part. And I draw my own. And then eventually, when I was at high school, I decided to put out a sort of thing. Then in college, I did exactly the same thing but on a bigger scale, and it just grew out of that. I've done webcomics. I've done independent publishing. I've done work for hire. I'm like a fungus. Yeah, I'm growing all over the place. Got my spores.
Comics funguses.
Comics fungus.
All right. Well, what do you find most challenging doing comics lately?
At the moment, staying on one topic is really hard for me. It seems that the wider audience you get, the more the pull is to do other things, and then you sort of end up forgetting the titles you initially did. To anyone who ever wants to start on comics, don't get tied into like doing one giant thing. Everyone wants to do their Transmetropolitan. Everyone wants to do their Hellboy, but at the end of the day, through your 8-issue series, you've drawn 4 of them, and then if you feel like I want to do something else now. So at the moment, my hardest thing is staying on topic. I've got to the point now where I've kind of worked out a balance between work and life. Like I can do the comic book work, do the sort of stuff I need to survive, and then also like actually have enough time to play Fallout 4 occasionally. Is that a giant carton of milk?
Orange juice.
All right. Okay. Right. Just checking.
And this is tiny.
Calcium in your diet.
This is very small.
For like for England, that take up the majority of my fridge.
This is like a half gallon. Usually, I drink 1 gallon to 2 gallons.
You're putting inside your diet.
But anyways, back from the orange juice.
The thing is, just sort of taking it back on point away from orange juice, right? I've really noticed that there has been a bigger move with Chris one-offs. Like, I think that even if you do one-offs with just the same characters in, but each one's a different story, it's harder to sell a continuous story than it is to sell like a repeated number of issue ones. As soon as people see that there are multiple parts, it becomes a tougher sale at like on a convention or on your store. So whilst you're building your audience before you launch into the big thing, I think sticking with like individual stories is a really good plan for people.
Doing some like short stories and some anthologies.
Yeah. There's like one shots, Like I was at Bradford Literary Convention this week, past weekend. I was there with I can't remember her name. Her name is Kate, and she is the artist on Widdershins, which is a great webcomic. And basically, on her table, she's got each storyline collected in a different book. And if somebody turns up, they can pick anyone they want to, jump straight in, like, single entity. If you have to read through all the lore, it works, but it's less cohesive if you got like they won't see you until the next time you're in a town on the convention circuit.
Right. Well, that would definitely work. I've seen them do something similar. Some of the big publishers with like Courtney Crumrin. Each of her different adventures were gathered into its own individual book.
Yeah.
But it was still all her. It was all her different adventures. But then you could dive into each one differently if you wanted to.
Well, it's like some of the greatest storylines are like huge volumes that will follow on from each other. So I always remember when I picked up the Sandman, I ended up picking up one of the last volumes and had no idea what was going on because my youthful mind expected me to pick up any one volume and just be a contained story. But when the Sandman came out, there's only one Sandman. Now the independent market is just filled with like thousands of Sandman style and Sandman quality books. So easy to get lost. If you can tell that one standout story, quid's in, man.
All right. Let's see. So you've been drawing and writing since you were just a wee thing.
A weein', yeah.
Yep. Do you think you've evolved pretty well in overall writing or artwork, or are you kind of is one slightly your weakness more than the other?
Been like meshed together because I do write without doing comics, and I do draw without doing comics as well. So I am like I do work in like graphics and art, and I do write short stories as well. But I think that if you're working by yourself, you understand your own limitations. So you learn to write for yourself. Good writer artist partnership, you get to know what it is that will bring the best out in them, and not to write X and Y. It's like, it always confuses me that when Rob Liefeld was writing and drawing his own comic books, he'd still write feet into the script despite the fact that he can't draw them.
He's gotten better,
I knew
actually.
I couldn't draw something. Yeah, if I knew I couldn't draw something, I just wouldn't like write it into the script. It's like the artist James Stoker once said on Twitter. This says, if I ever write a comic book for somebody without having to be the artist on it, it's going to involve a horse on a unicycle riding it down a spiral staircase, because like you've got no consideration for what you have to do.
Basically, this is an asshole.
I also think that like my working primarily by myself has actually the right for the people. So I wrote Corsair. I didn't actually draw it. It was drawn by Stephanie, who is known on Twitter as @Magician's House, and I think that there's sometimes a writer needs an insecure writer will have to try and remind you they're there, if you know what I mean. Like, you'll get writers who are like, every single panel has some words in it. Speech. Everyone's constantly talking or having an inner monologue. I think if you write for yourself, quite a lot of the time, you realize that you don't need dialogue in scenes. You can identify when you need to talk and when you don't.
I think overall,
I think you get that with like writer-director partnerships in movies as well. But
yes, this is true. I've actually seen it pulled off very well in some of the Batman movies, some of the older ones, not the newer ones. But some of the Michael Keaton ones, I thought actually did pretty well with that.
I think that Batman Returns is my favorite Batman film.
Really?
Yeah, with the Penguin and Danny DeVito and Max
Catwoman.
I think it's got the right balance of, well, it kind of captures that 80s style Batman that I was reading as a kid. It's like, it was grim and dark and violent, but at the same time so much more outrageously cartoonish than some of the Golden Age stuff.
Yeah.
Azrael became Batman for a bit and dressed up as like a Mechazoid, and was going around Power Rangering people, like.
All right.
Look nostalgically.
All right. Well, moving on. What are some missteps do you think other creators do in comics that you think they should try to avoid?
I'm not gonna like it's a tough one, because I always wonder what sort of position do I come from to tell people what to do. You know, I'm having success in my own way. You know, it's working for me. But you know, there are people who are like selling more books and making more money and having a bigger fan base and everything than me. But I think that if you're making any form of art, which obviously comics is, you should think yourself, what am I contributing with this? And that's it. If you can't answer that question, you know, it's like, I don't think you should be making it. You know, I think you should come back when you have an answer.
That's a very good.
The world doesn't need the world doesn't need more of what it already has. You know, it needs more voices in the conversation, more uniqueness. Don't try and be somebody else. That's it. There we go. That's the biggest mistake people make, is they try and be somebody else. Be you. You know?
It's true.
You see artists and they've got like or they just want to be like Greg Capullo, and it's like, don't be you. Find out what you're comfortable with and then put out your book. Don't try and be the next Grant Morrison, be the next you.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't try to walk in their shoes for a little bit just to see how they learn, how they did their stuff. But don't, you know, this is some of those learning processes that you can even keep to yourself. Or if you do want to put them out there, specify, hey, I did this in XYZ person's style or, you know, writing or whatever, because I just wanted to see how they did it.
If you read loads of Grant Morrison, you'll learn how Grant Morrison writes. You read loads of Warren Ellis, you'll learn how Warren Ellis writes. Read loads of Alan Moore, you'll learn that he's nuts. And you know, but like, you should always take on board what's there, but don't ever go like pour over Transmetropolitan or like Planetary and then gonna be Warren Ellis. Pour over Planetary and decide, you know, pick out the bits you like and then combine it with everything else you've got. When I was in college, I spent so much time trying to draw like Mike Mignola. And I don't at all, but the balance, how to get the balance right between light and shade and how to make lines compelling.
That real boldness that he likes to use.
Yeah.
Shadows,
I took it. I took it on board and made it part of me. But like, I would never try and be them. But there are things you read and you read the voice and you think that's not your voice. That's you trying to be somebody else. Don't be afraid to be you, because I think people will like you more.
This is very true. I mean, they're reading your stuff.
Take that with life.
Yeah.
Don't just keep that in comic books. Take that in life. Take this advice from a man who works under a pseudonym. Be yourself.
Well, I have worked under a pseudonym, but that's because I'm female. And for some fucking reason, people don't take female writers and creators as seriously as they do males.
Nope, that is correct.
And so I worked for a while there under a pseudonym just so that I would actually could build my audience, build my work, and I was just learning anyways. And I was like, I don't want that associated with my name anyways. So I'll do it under a pseudonym. That way it's all nice and pretty much near anonymous, and then we'll go from there. And I learned a lot.
Well, the whole Nick Gonzo thing came out from the fact that I was training to be an architect. So I was going to have a professional presence on the internet, and I was going to have like the comic book presence on the internet. But then I stopped being an architect and just kept being a comic book writer. So like the real Nick died, and then Nick Gonzo kept going.
You stabbed him and left him in the back closet?
He is gone. His body is buried under the patio.
Yay! Patio. We have this nice body indention on our patio, you know, don't worry about it. It adds
like Han Solo frozen carbonite.
Yeah, it just adds
it's
character.
Point. Like,
you can put a.
You can use the mountain as a fire pit. Like a burning log in there. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hold your beer in it.
Yeah. Have them as your little beer stand next to you. Yeah. Thank you, Dead Nick.
I mean, I'm sure we could talk for hours about absolutely horrifying it is being a woman in comics and writing and things like that. But
yeah.
One thing that always comes to mind, I think it was a Comics Alliance journalist who got an email telling her that women were a disease in comics and would be eradicated. And it's like, I kind of want there to be more comic book writers who are women now than men, just so this guy can get proven wrong. Like before I wanted it anyway, but now I really want it, like with a fiery passion.
Right.
I'm gonna have like 60 daughters and raise them all to be comic book writers just to piss this guy off.
I think you'd be a fantastic
Daddy,
father.
I want to be an astronaut. No, you're gonna write.
You're going to be a comics professional, just like your pop.
Listen, kid, this ain't my first trip round, okay? You're gonna get in that ring and you're gonna draw me 64 pages of a talking aardvark. Damn it!
No, I think overall, we're hitting a very crucial point in society right now in several countries, you know, mind yours. I mean, we're all hitting this very toxic level.
You know, the writer moving in over here as well.
Oh, yeah. We're hitting a hard toxic level with culture right now. And politics is definitely feeding into that. And they're letting some of the fucking loonies out. So that does not help anything. But we also need to talk about it. You know, we shouldn't just be putting this in the back closet. This should actually be talked about and let air, because that lets the crazy out, yes, but it also reduces the crazy, believe it or not.
I think that it's all about, I think if we need to air the appropriate matters, but we need to do it with a degree of tact. I think doing it for the purpose of selling a book is ridiculous. And I'm sure we could lead on to talking about Howard Chaykin's cover for United States of Hysteria, Divided States of Hysteria, if we really wanted to. But I think enough has been said by people who are far cleverer than me about it, which is genuinely, you know, we need to talk about these issues, but I would rather a trans writer talk about their experience of transphobia, or rather a female writer talk about their experience of misogyny. I'm never going to write a book about how hard it is to be a woman, because I don't know. And I would be making it up. I'm never going to tell somebody how they have been oppressed, because it's it's their story to tell. And I think that we should we need to tell the stories, but I think we should allow people to tell their own stories. And that's, you know, we should support them through that, not blindly attempt to express things we've had no experience of when there are people who have. Because you get that thing as well where people are like, I saw an interview with a guy and he was like, I think he was from some like Australian sitcom and he was on British television and he was a straight guy playing a gay guy. I don't see a problem with it. Like, you know, do I have to be a murderer to play a murderer? And it's like, no, but there are loads of out-of-work gay actors. There's very few out-of-work murderer actors who already live that life.
Yes.
Who can tell it much better than you.
This is true, but at the same time, okay, let's say you get hired to write a story and it's about a multicultural group of people, you know, some black, some white, some Hispanic, Native American, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
From different countries and whatnot. Now, me, if I was hired, I would go and try to interview people at least, you know, do some research at the very least. I would still be writing with my voice, but I would try to pepper them in as much as possible. But being that I'm not them and I don't necessarily have their full experiences, yes, it's going to be dulled. But I still think we should write about it regardless. But I do agree, though, that hiring somebody that has actually had that experience will be more impactful.
I mean, like, that's the big difference between you as the employee and you as the employer. Like, with my creator-owned stuff, I wouldn't want to tell that story because I feel like it's not the story I've lived. If I'm hired to tell that story, I'm not saying that only black people can write Black Panther. I'm not saying that, like, only women can write Wonder Woman. But I would think that if I was writing that story, I would do an appropriate amount of research into it. But I would rather that there was somebody, I would involve somebody who's lived that life. But like somebody, I can't remember who it was again. Wish I had some form of like memory. But somebody once said that, yeah, it's all well and good us celebrating the fact that the woman is writing Wonder Woman, but wake me up the day when you've got a woman writing a story arc on Batman. It's the fact that you've got the same people telling every story of telling every story, and it shouldn't be that case. It should be like a true equality should come from the fact that everyone is all over the place. But if you're telling if you're going to tell people how to be oppressed, you might as well get somebody who's actually been oppressed first.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Definitely. Research at the very least. Okay, I want to.
Yeah, at the very least.
One of my stories that I'm in the middle of writing, I've been writing it for actually a couple of years now. I've just, I'm not satisfied with it yet to make it to my comics just yet. But it does have a multicultural cast.
Yeah.
It's still fantasy, but I borrow from this one and borrow from that one to make my own little cultures. But I've called, I have emailed, I've at least tried to talk to people in those cultures, in those groups, basically, to try to do some research on it to some degree, just to round out my writing better, at least. And, so I also don't try to come across as either pandering or as appropriation, cultural appropriation necessarily. But, I also don't know because it's such a gray line sometimes with cultural appropriation, because many cultures over many centuries and eons have borrowed from each other so much that you can't completely say for a fact that this one only has this 100% little aspect or whatever.
The thing is, you're as a creator, you are caught between two worlds. You don't want to live in a world where you're reading just like one person's interpretation, but at the same time, you don't want it to be that everyone has to write certain stories as well. You don't want to limit what the creator's doing, but at the same time, you don't want just one creator doing everything. So it is tough, because it's a tough one, because like the more you talk, the more you realize there is another element of the story. The more you sort of go and another thing, to write Wonder Woman, and it's like, well, it would be nice if more lesbians. Sorry, no, only lesbians should write Wonder Woman. Only lesbians should write Batwoman. That's not my point, by the way. I'm not saying that. Don't get that put on a T-shirt. But like,
right.
It's like there is a school of thought that only a lesbian woman can convincingly write a lesbian woman. But that's not true.
Yeah.
Because some lesbian women can't write at all. I'm gonna say it. I'm sure there's some crap writers out there who are lesbian women. But like, a lesbian woman should be able to write Batman. A lesbian woman should be able to write Black Panther or Iron Man or whatever. So at the same time, you want everyone to have the right opportunity to write all the stories. But at the same time, I'd rather that if you are DC or Marvel, you should fucking hire someone who's fit to tell the story, not just give every single story to Brian Michael Bendis.
Yes.
For example.
Yeah. They lean quite heavily on what little talent they've hired, and then they just pile everything on them. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, they've got good voice in what they're doing and whatnot, but at the same time, why flood it? Why flood the market with only them? There's plenty of room there. You could even do some one-shots, hire some guest artists and guest writers to do their point of view on XYZ character.
I think that we wouldn't have to complain about the need for more diversity in writers if there was more diversity in writers. I know it's a really stupid point, but like, I'm here going and like, I want trans people to tell their experience of being trans rather than have it dictated to them by somebody else. But like, if it was mostly trans people telling a story, then occasionally like just a cis het guy like myself would just turn up and write that story, it'd be different. It'd be the other way around. But it isn't. It's like you've got like, instead of having unobservant voices amongst the observed, you've got like one person screaming the truth and a field of people going saying, I guess I think that's what that's like.
Yeah.
And if anything, like, at the end of the day, read a fucking book as well. It goes back to that. Do research. if you were in a market swamped with people who were telling their own diverse stories, you'd read theirs, don't try and be them, but you'd evolve part of yourself with that, wouldn't you?
Definitely would. Yeah, but this is also why I like independent comics so much over a lot of the bigger name companies. It's not that I'm against them. I mean, they've got good, solid work there from over the years, and we've got some up-and-comers that are definitely getting their voices out there too, like Boom and, you know, some of the smaller companies that are coming up here and really taking hold. But I think the voices of independence should be even louder, really, because they're the ones telling full stories in comparison.
I feel that the big two are getting wiser to the whole idea of people need to tell their own stories. Like, you know, you've had like Chip Zdarsky. I'm very sorry. Chip Zdarsky. He's like, he did like How to Duck, and you had they let Matt Fraction do his own thing with Hawkeye, and they did like Warren Ellis doing his own thing with Moon Knight, and they had like you got Squirrel Girl, and I just realized that every single one of those stories is written by a dude who is white. But you know, you get my point that they're sort of letting more weird white dudes do their strange things. Maybe they're just weird, ordinary people who aren't just the one white dude copy pasted over and over again and do stuff. But they're getting used to the idea that people need to do their own stuff more and more.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe because I can only name like. Have you read the Miss America comic?
No.
It was written by a woman of color. I think she also was also like LGBT. And it was a great comic book because it was written about an LGBT woman of color. Cover. See, you shouldn't get me at the end of the day. Should we just call it a day? You go home, I go home. It's all fine. LGBT woman of color writing about an LGBT woman of color. And it came from a position that you had the idea that she got the character nailed down because that was her life. And then from that, you can build a great story on top of it. Sure, is it like Black Panther is black, but like he's got other elements of his character. You don't want to spend the whole time convincing, like, it's like, you know, you spend the whole book trying to convince you that you understand what it's like to be black as a white writer, and you miss the fact that you've got a story to tell at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also just realized the irony of the fact that I'm just a straight white guy now telling people exactly what needs to be done to make diversity in comic books happen. So, you know.
Well, somebody's going to point it out. That's the other thing, you know. I've heard plenty of voices saying so, and we can just add ours to the pile because I'm sorry, it needs to be said regardless of who is saying it.
It needs to be said. You're entirely right. But like, I was at an independent comic book convention this weekend. I went to Bradford Literary Festival. I had 2 days there, and it was the first comic book convention I've been to where there was the same amount, if not more, female creators than there was men. And every single person in that room, if you lined all their comic books up against one another, you could pick out who they belonged to, or you could pick out they did belong to different people. Not a single one of them looked like anybody else's.
That's fantastic.
I mean, like there was a point where indie comics was a whole bunch of people releasing the same fucking steampunk superhero book. You know what I mean? Like it was the adjective noun, and he was doing the same thing, and he was muscular, and the aim was to look like a professional comic book. But now people are embracing their own uniqueness more. You're finding that there is more diverse output in the books themselves. Like there's a company called Shortbox that release comic books. They were there. They're led by Zainab Akhtar. She curates a box of comic books that happen every 3 months. You get a whole bunch of independent new voices come into your door. And I went and bought a few books from her, and every single one of them was unique, and every single one of them told a different story, and every single one of them was just absolutely beautiful for a different reason. You know, no longer do you have to.
Great.
Yeah, because I remember picking up a bunch of books from a convention once and just thinking, these are great, but who did I buy them from? Like, you know, I couldn't put them into piles from different people.
Yeah.
Now you know, each one's got their own boldness to it, and I think that's wonderful.
That is definitely neat. I love the evolution of comics in general, especially the past like 10 years. They've really grown, honestly. There's been this large independent growth in stories, breaking away from the basic superhero mold, and in both the character design and in the writing aspects. And I think it's just part of the evolution of this industry right now. And as much as we have everything in turmoil, I think it's just adding fuel to our creative fire.
I see the turmoil as being a sort of good thing. And it sounds like a real strange position to come from, but it basically means that I reckon that some things that happen in comic books people get outraged about nowadays probably just would have happened and no one would have noticed before. You know, we're recognizing what is wrong and we're making a stink and then it's getting changed.
Yeah.
And I genuinely think that the Marvel movies have really helped independent comic books because they've sort of got people through the door. And once they've bought like Man for a couple of weeks, they've gone, well, what else is there? And then they buy your book. You know what I mean?
And they're like, hey, there are other kinds. Wow, I didn't know.
There's more comfort in the market. Like, more people are coming to conventions, turning up to try and get the signature from, like, you know, the guy who draws a superhero book. Spider-Man? Yeah, that's still going, right? that indie title Spider-Man, right? So they go and get the guy who writes Spider-Man, then, you know, he's, like, retweeted something about liking some independent book, and then some other independent book selling all right, and, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
I think overall it's good. As scary as it can be, definitely. I mean, there's always the be safe factor in all of this, because we definitely live in a land of turmoil right now, where I found people
the world is pretty fucked up.
It is. It always has been, though. It's just it does get to certain higher levels of volatility, and then there are lower levels at times. But we're hitting a pretty high level right now. But I found that it's also, you know, with the advent of the internet, helping people to communicate more, and to also being a platform for creators to also put their work out on and to publish on. I think it's also opening up more eyes and more voices.
Yeah.
What do you think? Go ahead.
No, I agree. I mean, the thing is, it's always the tools that allow us to grow are the tools that also can hold us back the most. You know, like Twitter has allowed people to have stronger voices. I mean, it's created a new normal. Like, if your hobby was one in a million, you know, 6 people in London were doing it alongside you, but like you didn't have an opportunity to meet them because you're all doing it in basements with whips, and maybe they weren't doing with whips, but you know, I was, is all I'm saying. There's a lot of latex involved in the mid-90s for me. But anyway, but like now you're on a forum and you can be like, hey, you're doing this too. So I thought I was, and there were successful people doing comic books in my area, if you know what I mean. Like, obviously there are people that you know that come from where you live, like Tula Lote comes from Leeds, so you know, she's really quite a hot topic at the moment. She's a really great artist, but then yeah, there's a big differential, isn't it? You know, like she's working for Image and you're like down here like toiling away. So I sold a bunch of books online, and I saw that someone that people who ordered it, a guy I quite admired, was like a fellow creator, had bought my book, and I saw that he like lived in just down the road. So I was like, hey, do you want to go for a drink? And then now we're friends. So the same thing that allows people to sort of just suddenly discover they live down the road from one another and network. It's the same thing that people are using to like spread hate as well. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I get weekly, sometimes daily hate through Twitter and Facebook, but that's what the block button is for too.
Oh yeah, shit yeah. Best thing I ever did was download an auto blocker, because I used to in the second issue of my comic book 50 Signal, the main character reveals that he's neither a man nor a woman, because when he was that grown to be an astronaut, they decided that having gender features was like unimportant to like a cloned astronaut. And I thought that made perfect sense to me. But apparently that's some kind of crime against humanity, and I used to receive quite regular things. I must have received more death threats than I thought I sold issues in that comic. So they must be like passing around that they're like shitty meetings, being like, "Look at this horror! This kid's book has got a like non-gender specific person in it." But yeah. The thing is, that's the problem with freedom of speech, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's both a problem and a fantastic function of it. Then you know who the shitheads are.
The same thing that allows you to say good things allows somebody to say shitty things, but the best thing about it is it allows you to then tell them that they're wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
The louder the...
And I don't block everybody that throws me shit and throws me hate. Sometimes they want to give me a real critical slap for whatever, my art, my writing, whatever. And I'm like, okay, now this is typed word. It does not give me tone and context. So are you meeting? So I'll try to have a conversation with some people, and some of them are just batshit crazy. And that's when they get the block button.
Oh, yeah, but, there are nutty people.
Yeah. But some of the others, they're like, oh, no, I guess it came across wrong. But no. And then I can actually have a conversation with them. So I try not to hit the block button right away. I try to actually have a conversation with people that throw things out there that I might interpret it. Am I reading this wrong? Was this intended to be hateful, or was this just because it's the typed word? And so I don't know what tone they were meaning this in. I don't know what context, or maybe they just used the wrong word,
Give peace a chance.
Definitely.
And then block them if they're fucking nuts.
Yeah, pretty much. Because there's no point in also ingesting any hate. I keep making because of the haters. I actually had this conversation the other day. Somebody asked me what was motivating me to keep making what I'm doing. And I'm like, well, I like making it. And I can literally do this and tell them, look, I'm still making it. Ha ha.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful thing to be able to do, is that if you can transform somebody's shit into fuel, that's recycling.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah. Nah, it's they were and this was on a Facebook post from a friend, so a bunch of people are like, oh, the sunshine and God and whatnot, and I'm like, haters, yeah, haters really fuel my fire. And then she laughed underneath and she was like, I figured you'd say that. But there's no point in not accepting their energy and transforming it, as they say, into something you can use. So you want to say I'm crap at art? That is fine. That is your opinion. Good for you for having an opinion and expressing it. Fantastic. That doesn't change my art. And I might like it like that, and I like it, and maybe 20 other people like it like that.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just not your cup of tea. That's okay.
See, the thing is that, like, the gift of anonymity has really just allowed people to unleash shitty bits of them. And,
But I also see
it's kind of horrifying.
Yeah, as much as it's horrifying, I also see it as a psychological cleanse, Okay, I've got this opinion, and I'll immediately want to respond to something right away, somebody that throws crap at me, and I'm like, wait, why are they throwing shit at me? Are they just having a bad day and I just happen to be there? It could be some context to that as well. It could be that they not intended it this way, or I've even been tweeted a time or two and, oh, wrong person, I'm sorry. It happens.
See, I think it's quite interesting that you're far more forgiving than me. Like, people, if I get some guy arguing with me over like, bye, and that's it, you're gone, you're blocked.
I think I'm a little more diplomatic, but again, I like hearing what others say. But if they've gone off the full deep end of misogyny or hate or religious fervor, because those usually get intertwined pretty good, then I'm just going to
stars and garters. How could you suggest such a thing?
Yes. Finish the thought. Stipple my wrist to my forehead. Yes, yes. Nah, I found that you just have to turn it around on them, basically. And if they can't take it, block it, because there's no point in constantly getting that stuff thrown at you. Like, I just recently made my artist page on Facebook, and I just put everything I make on there. You know, hey, I made a podcast here. Oh, look, there's my new piece of art. It's up on Instagram, you know, blah, blah, blah. And the name of my art studio that I make stuff under and publish under is Sweetly Dark Arts. And I've had no less than 4 guys, and come to find out they're from a alt-right, anti-feminist group, constantly trying to spam my page with hate. Oh, you're fucking slut, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if you don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to spam my page. Yeah. That's called a block button, and I can actually report you for harassment.
It's like, why are you investing that much time in being a dick rather than like going out and not being a dick? Like, well, that's the thing, is it like the difference between you and them, isn't it? Is that they're coming to your page and giving you shit. You're reading the shit, you're making more stuff. What they could do is they could go, God, look at these women making these books. I'm gonna make a damn better book to try and drown these women out of the market. And, you know, kudos to them for doing that. Like, you know, but just they're not creating anything, and they're not destroying anything, they're just doing nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I'm like,
to quote Shakespeare, just sound and fury signifying nothing, which is also a great way of describing your farts. But
I thought that was Donald Trump.
Yeah. Donald Trump, sound and fury signifying nothing.
The truth!
Thank you, Macbeth. You're still relevant.
Yes!
But no, comic books are great, basically. I don't know why, whenever I come on any form of interview or anything, it always ends up with me preaching on about how I want the world to be a good place.
Well, because that's what you want to put out there, and that's what you want to receive. You know,
basically.
I make what I want to see out there in the world. I want to make silly books, and I want some fun, gritty ones, too. And, you know, I want to explore some psychological aspects, maybe, or, you know, racism, sexism. I mean, you know, big topics or small, you know. Things I've experienced, things I've interviewed people about experiencing, at least secondhand, you know. I mean, there's always these aspects of the world, and that's what I like putting out there, and so that's what I also want to receive sometimes. And yeah, we do want to try to make the world a better place, and we're trying to do it more or less therapeutically through the medium of comics. That's definitely a good, solid way to have a conversation.
It is a conversation. Art is a conversation. Like, you know, it's a two-way process. You're creating an idea to give to somebody. You might as well invest something in that idea.
It's true. All right, Nick. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up there. Thank you so much for letting me poke your brain for about an hour or so here and talk the world of comics and misogyny.
I was shocked that it's gone by so quickly. I've enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for coming. You're always welcome back on. And again, guys, I'll put links down in the doobly-doo for all of Nick's work, and that Kickstarter that will be starting up. You will find the link down there as well. Thank you so much. I will talk to you next time, okay?
Yep, thank you very much. Also, I realized that this shirt makes me look a bit like Spider-Man.
Yes, you're secretly Spider-Man? The English Spider-Man?
I would not be secret about it. I'd be like, I'm Spider-Man! Hey guys, it's me, Spider-Man! I'm Spider-Man!
You would be terrible with a secret identity.
Oh, Christ, yes. I'd be like Tony Stark. I'd be like, hey, you know that Batman guy? That's me! Hey!
Yeah. Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much, guys. We'll check you next time. Bye!